Everybody, here we are again. It's Turning Tuesday. Welcome back to the Woodworking Wisdom Workshops. Today, we are going to be looking at some offset jewellery pieces. So I've done this probably about a year ago now, actually, on one of our first Turning Tuesdays or Thursdays, whichever it was. So I thought we could, it's about time that we had another look. We've got lots of new viewers, of course. We've got lots of guys that have been here, guys and girls, sorry, that have been here for a long, long time as well. So I want to introduce everybody to the same pieces that we started way back when. Ben on cameras today, and I've got Jason on questions. So you know the form, guys. If you get a question, if you think there's something that you're unsure about, just say. Okay, so already we have a question, I think, from Jace. Yes.
Dave Robertson would like to know, when you use a vacuum chuck, is it better to have an oil-free or an oil compressor?
Oh my goodness. Well, do you know what, Dave? I've never used a vacuum chuck before in my life, so I wouldn't know. Jason, have you got any ideas?
I use a vacuum pump, so that's slightly different. That obviously is oil-free. The Big Jet 4242 lathe that we used to sell used to work with a Venturi system, which would work on a compressor, which therefore it's not going to matter if it's oil or oil-free, because you're just using the air to suck through to create vacuum. So hopefully that will answer that.
There you go. The lathe was a Palmatic lathe that we were talking about then. I guess what you're worried about is whether you're going to get any water or oil in through the system, because obviously that would then not work. I'll be honest, I don't know the answer. We haven't ventured into anything like that. I will try my very best. So if you pose that question on the Woodworking Wisdom emails, then we'll try and find out for you. I'm sure we've got plenty of wood turning friends around the world, so we'll be able to find out for you and get the answer. Okay. All right, to carry on just for a minute. Yeah, good. Right, jewellery. So let's just have a quick look at what we're going to do. Welcome, everybody, by the way, to our Woodworking Wisdom Workshops. Let's go to camera. Oh, let's an early trial for Ben here. Camera, what camera is that? 2, so I need to know. Yeah, brilliant. There we are. There's 3 pieces. They're nice and shiny. We've got a couple of resin pieces in there, but we've also got a laburnum piece as well. So what I wanted to go through is, as well as the making, where you would actually get the pieces from and how you would best get the figure to show through. Obviously, a couple of resin, like I said. So I'd like to go through a couple of casting techniques, I guess, before we then cut up and we start using some of these. I'm going to do 2 pendants for you. I'm going to do a solid timber one, and we're going to do a resin one as well, because they have to be treated slightly differently in the finishing, and that's all. I've got some I was nearly said special jaws. They're not special jaws. They're just jaws that I've customized for this process, but they're all available. You can do exactly the same thing as I'm doing here. I want to say it's not difficult, because I don't like demonstrating stuff that I don't think anybody can pick up and do themselves. So it may take a little bit more patience and a bit of practice, but anybody can do these. They're lovely little gifts, whether you sell your work or whether you don't, you know, to make little pendants like this are really nice. Uses up all the scraps in the workshop. So there, that's what we're going to do. Right, stay on that camera, Ben. I just want to show a couple of interesting things here. Oh, question first before we start. Let's get that held up while we ask a question. Yes.
So James would like to know, this is going back to your finishing the other week. He uses some black bison wax. Is that okay to use?
Yes. Black bison wax is one of our favoured waxes in here, actually. Don't be put off by the name. Black bison has no relevance to the colour. It's just a brand name from Liberon. And it's their mixture of paste waxes, really. And we use the clear and the neutral very often. The clear has a slightly yellow to the finish, and the neutral is a white. So you can put your neutral on your pale timbers, your clear on your darker timbers, or go with the coloured waxes. So there you get ebony, you get walnut, all different shade waxes. But we tend to go neutral and clear. No problem at all. I don't have any on the shelf at the moment, but in my own workshop, then there's plenty. So yeah, absolutely fine, no problem. Okay, so let's just have a look. Let's go to camera 2, Ben. So we're going to have a quick look at resin first, and I want to give you a few ideas. So everybody knows what a Banksia nut is. Well, if you don't know what a Banksia nut is, it's an Australian cone. And this is a slice through. So what I've done is sliced the cone through, submerged it in the resin, and you can see the little handle that I've made to get it out the resin pot, which was just a margarine tub. And then they can be cut up into their own sections then, look, and then just mounted on the back so I can hold it in the chuck as a piece of ply or bit of scrap wood. And I've done that with some hot melt glue. So that's the way we start all of these pendants. But I just wanted to show you the Banksy, and I thought that was a bit of fun. On the same sort of lines, bit of oak burr, same sort of thing. A bit of Australian burr here, so one of the Australian Goldfield burrs. And then this is quite a special couple of pieces here. Let me just put those down a second. So going back to cones or pine cones, this is a cross section. So the pine cone cut straight down its length. And that gives quite a nice, intricate sort of spider's web effect. Quite a nice little bug-looking like structure there. Those get cast in little yogurt pots. You can see the cone that I've got there, cast in a little yogurt pot. And that's just a green. And I've mixed in a little bit of yellow and swirled that. And you get like an aurora look from that one. This is one of the pine cones. Ben, actually put the still up just to, it doesn't show it off best there. So in the still, you should see a better effect. So there we are. That's that same, the same piece of jewelry there now. So you can see the pine cones clearly. A couple of different effects, just one close to the edge of the pine cone and one right through the middle. And then the other one there is a piece of oak burr with a bit of clear resin on one side. So it's a great way of not just using timbers, but using all those other interesting materials. Okay, just back to that camera 2 again, Ben. Now, we know things like any particularly nice timber, spalted beeches, any things like zebranos, zebra woods, all those sorts of things make a really good pendant. Think about pens. If the if you know you want to cut something to a pen blank, you need something with a really, really strong grain or strong color. It's the same in jewelry as well. Okay. Yes, another question.
2 questions for you. Cliff would like to know how you cut the pine cone.
Okay, so they start off solid. So let's get that one up again, Ben. Sorry, on number 2. They start off solid like this. So I've basically submerged them in a little yogurt pot, a little bit of hot melt glue on the bottom, and then top up with resin. And you can see the shape of this one here. You can see the yogurt pot shape. Okay. Submerged in, resin goes in. Now I've put these in a pressure pot. And the reason that I've done that is I didn't want any of the little voids to sort of hold bubbles. And if you don't put it in a pressure pot or vacuum, that tends to happen. So a little pressure pot, and I put it in there for 48 hours. And it was around about 25 psi. It's not a massive amount of pressure, but just enough just to shrink those bubbles all the way down till you can't see them anymore. And then once I've done that, then they can be sliced up safely. So the way I do that is turn that upside down and slice through it that way. So the bandsaw blade was coming down the length. You can handsaw them, of course. And you don't have to be particularly clean with the cut as long as you've got to a point which you can then cut out something like that. So that was from the same yogurt pot. And there we are. That was where it was cut from. Okay. And then, like I say, a little bit of waste wood on the top. Now, that's resin. We are going to turn a beautiful bit of zirconia as well. Same thing, same rule applies. You need a little bit of waste on the back. So a bit of hot melt glue, and that'll do the job. We're going to warm up with the timber. Okay, because you know, best will in the world, resin's always going to be a little bit tougher to turn. You have to be a little bit more careful on the resin than you do just solid timber. So they're nice little projects, these. So we've got 3 chucks, SK100s, and I'm only using 3 chucks because I'm using 3 different sets of jaws, and it's going to save me time just taking the jaws out and putting a new set in. That's the only reason. If I was working at home, I wouldn't be bothered to do that. I just changed my jaws, but you don't want to see me changing jaws every 5 minutes. So 3 sets of jaws. Okay, so look, there's our blank. Okay, so we're just going to pop that into our chuck. I've got a small set of, I think these are F jaws, and the 4 jaws are just going to hold on to my blank. Okay, pinch up. Nice and tightly, nice and secure. 50mm is the size I'm working on. And this is a fixed size for me on these. There is a little bit of play. Let me just show you why. So I have two other jaws I'm going to use afterwards, and we'll explain more about these jaws as we go. This one is a wood plate jaw. Okay, so the wood bit that you see on the top, the ply on the top, is what I've made myself. But the jaw bit is this bit. This is the connection between the timber and the chuck. These are actually known as wood plate jaws. This is a 150mm version, so 6-inch version. You then connect the jaw to your ply, and then you turn the recess that you want. So they're great for customizing jaw sets. Okay. The other customizable jaw set is this one. And these are known as soft jaws. And look, this is my offset. I haven't overthought this, or I did at the beginning. I thought, well, how am I going to get this offset in my chuck? I thought, should I, put the jaws in random order, that sort of thing? Would that work? And I've done that with engineering jaws before, but I wanted to make it repeatable for other people to copy. So these are far safer. And all I've done here, clamp that in my vise on the drill, and I've just done 3 sizes of Forstner bit and made 3 different sizes of hole there. So 3 different sizes of jewellery. So nice and simple. Just be aware once you've done it, you only need to do it once. If you've cut the wrong place, you're not going to go back and put the material back on again. But it is a turnable jaw, this one, known as soft jaws, and they bolt straight onto your mounting jaws. Really, really nice arsenal to have in your toolbox. So we're going to go through those. So those are the different jaw sets. So let's prep up first. And the first part of the preparation really is just cleaning up. So it's taking off the corners and it's putting a little arc, a little sort of radius on the front face. You can keep them straight if you want to. I prefer to have a nice little radius. So that's what we're going to do to start with. I might mess around. Ben, just tell me if I'm getting annoying and putting lights in the way of all the cameras and stuff. My old eyes, I won't be able to see what I'm doing unless I have some light on it, but I can turn it off if needed. Okay, so there we are. This is a timber called Zircote. You'd struggle to find it now in the UK, but it is a wonderful timber. I've had this for years and years and years, and I only cut it and use it up now for jewellery because it's so precious to me. It does cost a lot of money. And I'm going to turn fairly rapidly. And when I say rapidly, I'm up about 16 to 1800 here. Let's start with a 1/4 inch or 6mm bowl gouge, and I'm just going to cut the edge away. And we are going to have the dust extraction on at some point, guys. Guys and girls. When I say guys, I'm referring to everybody, not just the blokes out there. Guys and girls. There we are. I'm just checking. Now that's round. We've got no flats, no facets on there anymore. Or I'll just double check that. There we are. Yeah, nice and round. Now I'm going to skim the surface just with a drag cut. There we are. Now you have a choice. Nice little radius. I can't just leave that straight off the bowl gouge though. I want to clean that up. So I've got a choice. I can either go for, because we have to mention at least once during a demonstration, the Colwin signature skew. There we are. We got it in. Or put that away. Or the tool that I'm going to be using for the resin is one of the carbide tip tools. Now this one slightly more special than the other one that I have for this purpose because it's a micro version of the carbide tip tools. So nice little micro handle. There's around about 2 dozen tools that can go into this one that we're supplying at the moment, and 3 different types of carbide tool for jewellery. Beautiful. And this is a little rougher, but actually, you know, for doing these little faces, it's absolutely spot on. There we are. Let's stop and show you what we've got there. Now that is just going to work especially well in a minute on the resin. What a beautiful timber look. Those lovely, lovely dark lines. There's a little bit of sap, which we're going to keep. We're going to retain that. That's a real feature of that piece. I'm going to go through the abrasive now. It's a dense timber. We don't need to go coarse. The 100 grit can stay to one side. I think I will start at 150 though. If we go 150, 240, 400, that should do us. Grab a 150. So dust extraction is going to go on. You know what it's like. I think you can still hear me fairly well with the dust extraction. So I'll still carry on talking to you. There we are. So 150, 240, 400, 600. Now, if we needed to go, let's get that light out of the way in a minute. If we needed to go finer, or if we thought maybe actually that timber's too dense, it needs another grit in between the 240 and the 400, then I go 320. Okay, just to sort that one out. But let's try. Let's get that down nice and smooth. I want to do the other one whilst we're in here. We'll do the resin one as well. So the 150 grit is taking away all the nasties. I'm going to do the outside edge as well. And I'm going to knock off that hard corner. All that with the 150. Now I'm going to move to the 240. Get that outside edge up. Then the 400. And if you found things were getting a little bit hot, there's nothing stopping you, certainly on exotics, just get the water out and sand with water. You raise the grain if you do that, or even wax. We were talking about the black bison earlier. One of the first times I've seen people, saw people using the black bison was actually to sand. And it was a guy called Bert Marsh. If you follow turning, you'll know exactly who Bert Marsh was. Bert Marsh was using wax to stop the dust. We were sanding on the Norwegian wood turning cruise ship, and he didn't want to make any dust, so he was using that to prevent the dust. There we are, we're looking all right. That's lovely. So that's that one done. So what I'm going to do, that one can come away. Let's go close up. Camera 2, you can just go to 2, Ben. There we are, you can see that lovely grain. So we're going to stick with what we're doing, but we're going to go to one of the resin ones now. So let's just turn our noise off. We'll answer a couple of questions. Yeah, Jace.
JP & Company would like to know where he can buy your skew chisels in the States.
In the States, so you want to be going to Wood Turning Store in New York, woodturningstore.com. And they, I think they're just about getting fresh stock now. They've gone through a lot of them. But yeah, woodturningstore.com in New York. Okay, so we're going to do number 2, Ben. Lovely. We'll do a bit of Banksia nut because I think that's going to look cool. This is the eco-epoxy, by the way. Yes, Ben. Jason, another question.
Would like to know, he's not sure, did you mention the diameter of the blanks you're roughly using?
So I want to finish up with 50 mil discs. Okay, so 50 mil discs. So to do that, I need to start around about 53, 54. Depends how accurate you are at putting your little discs in the middle. Okay, if you're quite accurate with that, then you can go smaller. But yeah, I want to end up with 50 mil. I've cut all my jaws to suit that size. Another question there? No, you're okay. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing to this bit of resin. There we are. And at the moment, go above a minute, Ben. Yeah, number 2. So at the moment that you can't quite see through to the Banksia nut. So I've got a seam there. So I'm going to turn the front face off and that will expose the Banksia then. And I've purposely cut these so it's not the whole surface. So I've cut the round out of there. So we've got quite a wide section of resin and then you cut into the Banksia nut just to give a little bit of an effect there. Now this is going to, I know this sounds beautifully, so certainly we'll use a little bit of water as well. Let's just clean up that surface. Lay speed's around, what, 1700 at the moment. Let me just stop and check. So we've still got a few little flats on here, so we're going to take a little bit more of a cut. Yes, Jace.
Colin would like to know, I really do one for you. He's obviously got some O'Donnell jaws. Could you use those instead of that jaws?
Yeah, no problem. Depends on the size of the ODs, of the O'Donnells. If I had a big set of O'Donnells, for instance, there we go. If I had a big set of O'Donnells like that, on the camera 2 there, Ben, then actually even those aren't too bad. You're just going to have to vary the size of your scrap piece or your, your plywood to suit the jaws you have available. But yeah, absolutely. I just picked those because they were a fairly small jaw. That was all. Yeah, no, absolutely. We all got to work with what we've got to hand, haven't we? So I think let's just go one more cut. We'll do the famous last cut. There we are. That'll do us. Now we're going to start skimming the front face. And if you're unsure about resin, if you've never done it before, then little pieces like this are probably your best start to it, to be honest. Don't go and do a big piece that, if you get a failure, you're going to cost you a lot of money. Do some small pieces. In terms of molds, on small pieces, yogurt pots, margarine tubs, takeaway boxes, that sort of stuff. You don't need to spend a fortune initially. The resin is expensive enough. Now I'm just going to clear the mess and see where we are. I want to make sure that we're fully through to the Banksia nut that's underneath. Okay, so I think we need to do at least one more cut there, but then we're through. There we are. That's it. Now I'm going to go to my carbide tools. Arguably, you could have done that straight from the off with the carbide tools. Yes, Jace.
Right, 3 or 4.
Go for it. Yes.
Eccentric chuck.
Yeah.
Will it fit the Nova G3? So I think the simple answer really is you'd need to measure the diameter of the jaws for the G3 chuck, and I think we list the back plate size that goes onto the eccentric chuck, which I think is 64 mils. You need the jaws to match that, so I can solve that one. How ecological is the eco-epoxy, Colwin?
Once dry, it's no different to any other epoxy resin. It's actually made from a plant. It's a plant-based material, as it's that's where its main content comes from. There's 80% bio at the moment. They are working. They have their own eco-epoxy. They have their own labs. They are working to get it 100%. Bio content. But it's like anything. Once it dries, it won't break down that quickly. It is, no different than any other epoxy afterwards. So you have to ask yourself the questions, really. But now, as a liquid, then it is one of the safest ones out there.
Okay, Colin, another one, just a quick one.
Yeah.
With the sanding, would you use mineral oil?
On epoxy, you could do. Any liquid, really, as long as the liquid that you're using isn't going to affect the finish afterwards. So say, for instance, if if it was on this sort of thing, so resin, yes, that would be fine, but water would be as good, if not, a bit cleaner. So it wouldn't need to go for the oil, and then it wouldn't get in the way of any top coat that you wanted to put on if you wanted to put a top coat on. And sometimes you might want to put like a countertop resin over the top of this if you wanted to get a real true glaze, for instance. So yeah, it wouldn't hurt, but I'll go water, to be honest.
What were the jaws called that you mounted the timber into?
These here, I think these are the F jaws. Okay, and they're a dovetail jaw, but it's just the size I was going for.
Last one for a second.
Yep.
What adhesive are you using to glue the waste block onto the blank?
Ben just passed me. There's a phantom hand coming in. We're reaching. We're at least 2 meters away from each other. There we are. I'm just using a glue gun, and the glue that I'm using is the one suitable for wood, plastics, and metal. Okay, and I think it's yellow. I'm pretty sure. Ben's looking at me and smiling because he knows as much as I do. Okay, look, let's go to that camera 3 a second. Just have a quick look. The Banksy nut coming through. Isn't that lovely? So we'll sound that up now. Yes, Jace?
While you're still doing your resin, question, do you need a pressure pot for the eco-epoxy?
You don't need a pressure pot for the eco-epoxy, no. And then certainly if you think about it, if you ever come to do tables and things like that, you can't put a tabletop in a pressure pot. 2 things. So it's not strictly a resin demo, but let's look at vacuum chambers and pressure pots. They are very different. Vacuum chambers withdraw all the air from your timber or material that you're casting, and then that sucks in the resin. Generally, on that sort of thing, you use a much thinner type of resin, things like cactus juice, that sort of stuff. If you're using a pressure pot, you're not actually withdrawing any air. You're compressing. You're making those bubbles so small that you won't pick them up with the naked eye. And for me, that's certainly the way I've chosen to go. You generally get the pressure pots bigger than you would a vacuum chamber. And so for all the jewelry, small bowls, things like that, then I can use my pressure pot. And it's around about 300 mil across. The next question I know you're going to ask me, though, is where can you get it from? At the moment, Axminster tools do not sell them. Okay, so you're going to have to source them online separately. At the moment, we're not, but watch your space. I know for sure that we definitely will be at some point in the future. Okay. Right, I'm going to start sanding before we get any more questions. So we're going to go back through the same grades, and then we're going to introduce some very, very fine ones with water. So at the moment, the lathe is still running at that same speed. I'm going to turn it down. I want to turn it down to around about 1200 revs. And I'm using 150 just initially. Sounds really, really coarse. Don't worry though, I just need to clean up that surface nicely. I'm going to then spend ages with the 240. There we are, that'll do. 240. $400. Okay, I'm going to stop the lathe. I just want to check to make sure we've got no real deep scratches in there before I walk away from the coarser grades. Just a little one right in the middle. The camera won't pick it up, but I just need to get rid of that. Then turn the lathe speed down a little bit, introduce some water. Turn it down a bit because I don't want to get covered, that's all. Now this is what we were talking about earlier. When we were talking about using wax, just to get rid of all the shaving, all the dust, sorry. What it also does, it stops clogging. So if you've got a very oily timber, teak, olive, lignum, all of those timbers, then this is the way to go. Wax or water will do a good job. There we are, so 600. There we are. Now I'm going to start working through these. So we're going to go up to about 1200 grit. If I'm honest, I'm not going to spend too much time here because this is an opaque resin. There's no need for me to go super fine. If you're creating a transparent piece of jewellery, like some of those I showed you earlier, then that's where you need to go really fine. This I can afford to stop fairly soon. There we are. Let's go straight. What's that? That was number 3, 4. So we're up now to around about 3,000. And I think we're going to stop here. There we are. That'll do us. Put that to one side. A little bit of tissue. I'm just going to check, make sure I'm happy. There we are. That's a nice little contrasting colours. Yes, Jace.
Right. Okay. Where to start? So, which order? Could you use a vacuum pot to first remove the bubbles and then use a pressure pot overnight to cure?
Well, you wouldn't need to. You wouldn't need to. Just put them straight in a pressure pot. You know, you only need to use a vacuum pot if you want to stabilize timber. So corn cobs, soft timbers, that sort of stuff, and using that very thin resin to impregnate the timber. Pressure pots, like I say, that's for this sort of thing. So you don't need to use the two. Vacuum chambers for pen making, pressure pots for all other resin.
Colin would like to know if you can improvise a pressure pot out of an old pressure cooker.
I don't know, and I don't want to say yes because if you had an accident and hurt yourself, I don't want to be responsible. That's a research online, I'm afraid. Colin, have a look at that one. I would, when it comes to vacuums and pressure, I would probably go straight for the real thing, the purpose-built thing. I mean, pressure, you don't want any explosion. Your pressure pot, if you get an explosion in one of those, there could be some serious damage done to you. Okay, yes.
Mike would like to know if the pine cone is going to be softer than the resin. So do you get a discrepancy in when you sand it? So it wears the pine cone away more than the resin?
Not really, especially if you go quite quick. And if you're sanding with water, you'll certainly feel the difference, but not massively. It's not going to be a big difference. I would say more the texture comes through as opposed to, you know, sort of big divots and voids sort of thing. So it's not a negative by any means.
Okay, Carl. Can you just, what you've just put on the lathe now, Cherry was asking about those earlier, so can you explain what you just put back on the lathe for me?
Yeah, sure.
He also would like to know if they fit the neighbour chuck.
No. So you buy, the chuck you buy, your jaws fit, so Nova chuck will fit Nova jaws, vice versa, Axminster, and so on. No chuck manufacturer looks at other people's chucks when they're making their jaws, because in their opinion, theirs are the best. So they come up with the best formula, and that includes sizes, register areas, all those sorts of things. So unless you're very, very lucky, no, they won't fit. So Axminster for Axminster, Nova for Nova. All right, so let's just have a quick look at this jaw again. So number 2 there, I think, Ben. So this is the main chuck. Okay, the wood plate is this bit here. So this is the bit that joins onto your chuck, and then in turn you screw that to your timber. Now, if you go online, if you look for this product, Lily, I wonder if I think I've sent you the link. Would you be able to look at wood plate jaws? Have a look at that part number on the Axminster website. I've done a separate video there on how to make a set of wood plate jaws. So go through the construction, the whys and why nots of using timber against ply and things like that. So you'll get all the information you need to make a set of these of your own and the product details. And then all I'm going to do, once you've made your actual jaw, is then cut the recess to suit the project you're doing. Now, you can't just close this down, or you could. If you just close it down all the way and turn a recess, the minute you open that chuck, it's going to be off center. So I would put a piece of dowel in the middle, clamp on a piece of dowel. I'm not going to clamp onto my finger now, but clamp a piece of dowel in there, then turn your recess, because these jaws need to be firm when they're turned. You can't just open it, leave a gap and turn it, because they'll be rattling around all over the place. They're not holding anything. So a bit of dowel in the middle, then turn your recess. I've sized them for 50 mil, which is the size of my blanks here. And then we can pinch on what we call the optimum size. The optimum size is actually the perfect round. Okay, which is quite important. If you're looking to grip something small, if you're looking to grip something accurately, then you want to be cutting on the optimum size, really. There we are. I'm going to turn that bit of waste away. So lathe speed is 0 because I've changed a few things. You know, this is just one use for these jaws. There's so many different uses out there. The bigger jaws you make, you can use them like you would use a set of button jaws or cold jaws, you know, to hold the rims of bowls or boxes, all those sorts of things, to take off feet. They're really quite a versatile jaw. So get rid of the waste. There we are. I'm going to go back now to the little carbide tool. Let's just raise the tool rest a little bit. Scrapers do tend to like to be dragged, so handle high, and that includes the carbide. Stop and have a look, see where we are. Yep, that's ready. We can sand that one now. So we'll go through the same process. Then we're really quickly go through the other one. You know, timber's always going to be much, much quicker than resin because we don't have the water element. There we are. So 150. And of course, we're dealing with timber here, this wood plate jaw. So I can sand all over there. It doesn't make any difference. A little bit with a 150, then we're going to go through our 240. Go 240 or 400. Lathe speed's going to come down a little bit now. Start introducing some water. There we are. Now we can start at 600. And then we'll go through our grades again. So for all of you guys in the States, as I will say that the woodturningstore.com in New York, they're doing all of our chucks, centers, jaws. So if I've mentioned anything here, if you speak to the guys at the Wood Turning Store, they'll be able to help you out. So one more grade, I'm getting covered here, but I want to speed through this a little bit. So number 4, and that'll be it. Now, we were talking a minute ago, what happens if you're doing a transparent bit of resin? I'd go all the way through the grades here, but then I'd want to go even finer. So I'd then go on up to, we then go also on to the acrylic polish, just to give you that final glaze. Give them a good wipe off. Get rid of our abrasive for the minute. We'll quickly do the Zero Coaty one. Let's just show you what we've got so far though. All right, so we've got our little disc. That will have a further polish when we finish. And I think I'm going to have the thin bit probably in the resin. That'll be the stronger area. Banksia nut as a piece of timber isn't overly strong. So I'm going to, the thinnest area up the top where the resin is, I think. Okay, that's that one. And then our Zero Coaty. Zero Coaty. Nice and easy this will be. Go straight in that same position. We're going to buff this at the end with one of the buffing wheels also. It's quite a nice way of finishing these because we can use the carnauba wax to get a real glaze on these. There we are. We'll make this one a little bit thinner. There we are. Now we're going to go to the skew. Nice big flat surface. There we are. Let's double check, see what we're like. Yeah, little nib in the middle. I'm going to sand that away. I'm not going to worry about doing anything else. Yes, Jace.
Frogfella would like to know, is there a significant difference in the weight between timber ones and resin ones?
Not really. No, not really. Obviously, it's going to depend on the timber a little bit. But if I take, for instance, those two, first two that I grab, oh, sorry, 3 that I grab, but those two, wherever you think, Ben. So you've got a resin and a laburnum one. They're very, very similar in weight. There's not a lot between those two. You know, the timber I'm using here, the Zero Coaty, is quite a dense material anyway. So no, not much difference. Yes.
Are polyester resins as good as epoxy for Colin?
Okay. If you're casting them, then go with epoxy, because polyester resin that will require far more ventilation and you to be completely geared up with your sort of hazmat protection, because it's very pungent and it will completely stink out the workshop and the house. So I would go with epoxy. There's so many casting epoxies on the market now made for us. So I would go along those lines. In terms of turning, epoxy resin's a little bit softer compared to the polyester. and known to be a bit easier to turn as well.
And Fred Fella would like to know, with the wood plates that you're obviously using now, could you not just make plywood sections to fit on the mounting jaws?
You could do. They wouldn't be as secure though. You know, you got to think about how big a mounting jaw is. That contact area, that surface, is around about sort of 15 mil across. Where these jaws that I'm using here, this is a 6-inch diameter, 150 mil diameter. So that bearing surface, the load there, is so strong. I'm using plywood because I don't want to use a timber that has weak spots, as in down the grain. So plywood cross-grained, that grips very nicely. And if I'm reversing a bowl onto this, for instance, it has to be a really secure fit. So that would be the reason that I would always go for a set of wood plates over the small joint from mounting jaw. Yes.
So Frederick would like to know, have you considered using CA glue as a finish on these, or don't you like it?
I would do something with a small diameter, something like a pen, absolutely fine. But on this sort of thing, no, for me, it's a very messy finish to use. And on this sort of size where you've got 2 turning, so you're basically doing the main round turning and then you're doing the offset turning, it would just be difficult to use. Everything would stick to everything, if you know what I mean. Pens, it's slightly different scenario, you know, but this, it would be a little bit messy. You know, I'm getting covered in water as I speak anyway, so probably not the best thing. All right for the minute. We're going to turn the dust extractor back on again. This is 150 grit. 150, so we're going now straight to 240. $400. $600. And that should be it. So again, let's take that out and have a look. Oh, we're going to change jaws again. There we are, so nice little play. Of course, I mean, there's nothing stopping you from keeping it just like that and making it into a pendant. Still a beautiful bit of timber. So, we'll swap our chucks. Like I say, you know, not everybody's got the luxury of having several chucks they can use. So this would be just a case of swapping jaws over it if you don't have enough chucks to do this with. I absolutely get that. So we're now moving on to the soft jaws. Remember, I haven't done anything overcomplicated. I was guilty at the very beginning when I first started doing these of making it complicated and thinking, how am I going to get an offset in there? So I didn't turn it, I drilled it. We have three sizes of drill bit. These were Forstner bits that I'm using in here. Sawtooth bit would be fine on this because it's not timber. Start with the large hole first, because that will then give you a center point. Then go to the next size down. You follow that center point, next size down, follow that center point. You're on about probably the top one here, about a 4 mil recess. Then I'm going to 3, and then a large one down the bottom just to take away waste. All right. So let's do our first one. I'm going to go wood first, just to warm us up.
Exactly on the soft jaws now. Okay. How do you hold them when you put them on the drill? Are you obviously loading them on the chuck as they are now? They're
on the chuck as they are now. Okay, and at your optimum size, so where it's about a 6 mil gap down the between the jaws here. Hold that in your drill vise, and then you're free to drill. So lock everything down first. Don't try and hold the drill and then the chuck and then try and drill, because you'll have an accident. So hold them in a drill vise, then drill away. So what we're going to do, you think about where center is. Center is here. Okay, so position this where you want the center to be. I want it to be away from the sap, so I'm going to put it there. And we're going to drill this because I want line the other side up when I've finished doing the turning. Remember, usual thing here, just tighten that up just enough. Stop just before you hear the first crack. There we are. And we're going to use a little lip and spur. How's that light there, Ben? Can everybody see okay? I'll put a little bit of light on that. There we go. Let's get that speed controller over near me. Now, don't worry, I'm drilling through into a void. So the center of the chuck is hollow. There is nothing the other side of that pendant. So I can drill through. I'll know when I'm going through. I do want to take my time, though. Oh, let me just set my... Something's not straight there. I do want to take my time. I don't want to just explode through to the other side, because if I do that, I'm likely to create a load of tear out. So I want to just take my time. There, I'm through. I want the little lip on that little lip and spur bit to actually cut like a plugging bit. I want it to cut the other side. I don't want it just to push through, otherwise we'll have an issue. Now, I'll just show you what we've got. There we are. So that's where the offset's going to be. Okay. Now, just leaving it like that, it's not very tidy. And we could do much, much better. So let's drop the tool rest down a wee bit. There we are. And I'm going to go back to a little 1/4-inch gouge. Let me speed up a little bit. And I'm just going to start doing a little bit of shaping here. Take your time. Absolutely no rush when it comes to this. There we are. So that's enough. Let's go all the way through there. Let me show you again, and we'll sand this now. There we are. So if we sand, doesn't take much. I'm going to avoid the 150. I'm going to go straight to 240, 240, 400, 600. Just check to make sure that that's doing enough of a job. Right, despite what I said, I'm going to go back to 150. Little ridge just there that's not going to come out very quickly. There we are. Now back to 240. $400. And then finally onto our 600 grit. See what we've got. There we are, happy with that. So we can turn him over. Yes, Jason.
Martin would like to know if you could make the offset jaws with plywood a bit like the ones you used earlier.
Oh, on a yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you get yourself another set of wood plate jaws and do exactly the same thing. No problem whatsoever. Easy. Right, let's just brush that muck out because you don't want anything in between the jaws and the pendant. So remember where center is again. You've now got a hole. Okay, center is going to be here. So that hole needs to line up with that center point. Keep it in line. There we are. Remember, you now got a far more delicate piece of timber. Don't need a drill now, of course. So we're straight into our turning. Back with that gouge. Down nice and delicate. Take your time. Don't go crazy with your cuts here, because what will happen is you'll get an awful lot of breakout. There we are. Let's just stop and have a look. I think that should be fine. That's good. See, there's some little bit of fiber in there. That's only fiber. That's nothing to do with the main structure. That's going to be a nice little round hole in there. So there. Let's sand that up and crack on with our Banksia nut. 150, 240, 400s. Now onto the 400. Should be enough. Yeah, we're good there. I'm happy with that. So out he comes. Yes, Jace.
So GBB would like to know, do you use a different drill when you drill the plastics, or are you using the same bit when you drill your hole?
Yep. So we're using exactly the same drill bit. Good timing. Let's do it now. So there we are. So I want to have the hole in the middle. If that makes any sense. Hole right there. Give it a tap every now and again just to make sure it's secure. If it's rattling around, then just go back to make sure it's nice and stable. So drill chuck. And it's again, it's just a lip and spur bit. Don't forget to take him out the lathe when you're not using it, because it will get your elbow. I'm going to buzz through this a little bit. Yes, Jace.
Colin would like to know if this is the start of your Christmas presents.
No, next month, Colin. Next month. Never too early. So I'm just being a little bit delicate. I don't want to take a big cut. There's so many different materials going on here. If you think about the Banksia nut, which is a soft material, then the potential for shattering of resin. If anybody's out there's ever tried to turn a coffee bean resin blank, they'll know exactly where I'm coming from. You've got a mixture of materials. They don't always work brilliantly together. So sharp tools. There we are. We're going to sand that. I'm going to sort of bully this a little bit, just so you're not watching me sand for too long. Yes, Jace.
Just going back to the drill bit question. So what type of drill is it?
So it's what they call a lip and spur. I think Brad Point is the same description. Let me show you. Camera number 3. Sorry, you had the yeah. Let me see if I can get closer. Not going to focus. There we go. All right, so it's a lip and spur or Brad Point. Let me just stop the lathe to get me focus back. There we go. Good. So 150. Sorry, that was 240. I've done the 150. 240, 400. 600. Stop and have a quick look. There is a big mess in the middle. Back to 150.
The Gazza would like to know, when sanding something small and delicate between grits, is it worth blowing or dusting off the brush with a soft brush to clean the dust out, or do you just keep going?
Tend to keep going, if I'm honest, unless you're doing a waxy timber, you know, one of those timbers that sort of retains the dust and wax mixture. I wouldn't bother normally otherwise. What grit size is that? That's 240. Right, 400 again. And then 600. And then we're going to get some water in there. So lay speed down a little bit. I don't want to get a shower too early. We are now number 3. 3 equates to, from memory, around about 1500. There we are. That's enough. Swap them over. Looking nice. Let's just dust down. Let me just show you what we got so far. Okay, nice little. You know, those curves really sort of show the difference in the grain off really well. So remember what I said about finding center with the hole that you've already drilled. Just line it up. Just be careful on your pressure. Lay speed up again, so sort of, I don't know, 1700 revs. Nice and gentle. I would, if you're doing this, I mean, normally I'd be turning these with the dust extractor on. If you're going to do that, now you can see how dangerously close the dust extractor, and quite rightly, how close the dust extractor nozzle is. Just go to number 3 a minute. Oh, you're on number 3. Here's my dust extraction nozzle there. So you can see how close that is. You know, there are occasions where these will pop out for no explanation really at all. A little bit of chicken wire over the front of your dust extractor will save your work from that horrible fan in your extractor. So a little bit of chicken wire, stock netting, small opening stock netting, that sort of stuff. To see what's a little bit of a knocking going on there. What was that? Nothing. Right, 240, 400, 600. A little bit of water. Yes, Jace. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
All right. Rob Feller would like to know if the pendant was left with no finish on it, as the timber.
Yep.
Is there a risk of an allergic reaction with the timber and the skin?
It depends, it depends on that person. I know a lot of people are very, very allergic to yew, for instance. And I would say, yeah, you've got to be really, really careful with that sort of material. So I would, certainly advise of what the timber is when it's being given. Definitely, if you're at all unsure, either don't use that timber or make sure it's covered in something. Yes.
Okay, so that's one. Steve Scott would like to know if you use soap with wet and dry, will it help reduce the scratches?
I guess it would a little bit. You think of Yorkshire grit, cut and polish. All of those abrasives use the fact that it's suspended in wax to minimize on scratching. So yeah, I would have thought that would really, really help. Certainly, I know using water with wet and dry is so beneficial.
Another question: what do you do with the wood shavings on this? Because obviously they've got lots of plastic bits in, so
yeah,
does it make a mess?
It does make a mess. We're going back to that sort of eco message right at the beginning. It is, once dry, it is a plastic. You've got to be responsible with what you do with it afterwards. And I would check with your local council, who what they would advise, whether it has to go to a tip, be looked after, especially. I certainly wouldn't go sprinkling it on the garden, that sort of stuff. So yeah, take advice on that one. Take advice on that one. There we go. That's the one. So that's number one. I'm getting covered in water here. So we're going just very quickly up through the grades. Really does me a big favor, the fact that this is an opaque resin. So basically the difference, when you're using pigments, this is the difference between 2 drops and literally a pinprick of pigment. You don't ever be fooled with pigment. It is so concentrated that you'll be surprised. That you'll need the least amount to actually make a big difference. There we are. That's all I'm going to do. Wipe off any excess. And to be honest, that needs to dry a little bit. We're going to force the drying, though. We're going to buff a little bit. A little gunk on the back. So once again, there we are. There's our little resin pendant. Let's get the other one up with it. We're going to put a buffing wheel on now. Just do a little bit of buffing on those two. And that'll see us done on this project. So I'm going to use something we were talking about actually last week on the finishes demonstration, the Q&A. We're going to use a buffing wheel. I've got a little Morse tapered pigtail. I'm going to start off with buff. Now, last week it caused a little bit of confusion in terms of the resin. Sorry, not the resin. The compound we were using. I know it is Tripoli and Trisopomax, and if you look in the small print, yes, that's what it's called. We've also referred to it as buff in a few areas. Well, buff for me is that material there. That's what we use. That's a true timber buffing compound. But we use also the dark compound Tripoli or Tripomax. As a company, we sell that in 3 different types, from 3 different manufacturers, I believe, and size of bar. They are all the same thing. They do the same job, but it did cause some confusion. So chocolate brown color is the one for dark timbers, and what they actually call buff is what I use for the paler timbers. Okay, so don't let that confuse you. Okay, so we're going to use that on both just for the moment. And then on the timber one only, I'll use some Carnauba. So a stitched mop, 1400 revs. Nice, a little bit of care to be taken here. You don't want it ripped out of your hands and shoved down the dust extractor. Take away all the excess sort of gunk that comes from that wet sanding on this one. Do be careful when you're doing resin, especially not to press too hard, because you'll get that super hot and the resin will melt. So nice and careful. There we are. So we get that nice sort of sheen on that one. Do the same on the Zero Coaty. There we are. Once again, already we're starting to get that really nice sheen. And because this is an independent type of finishing, we're not finishing on the lathe as such, you don't get those polish lines. So for this sort of thing, it's really works well. So we're just going to swap the mops over now. I'm going to go with a loose leaf mop, and we'll get a little bit of Carnauba, only on the timber one. Carnauba doesn't sit that well over epoxy. Same speed. So Carnauba wax or wood turner stick, equally as good. Now I'm just going to do a little section, then show the camera. I can get that glinting for you. So you can see the shine immediately that comes on the timber when you use Carnauba. Really great finish for us turners. There we are. If I put them both together now, we got our afternoon's work so far. Definitely the higher shine is the Zero Coaty over here. That's the result of using that Carnauba wax. And then once you've done that, all I would do, and I've bought several different types of jeweler's waxed string or leather, work really well. Okay, and just a simple tie, Where are we? There we are, a simple tie on the piece of jewelry, and then they hang nicely, little pendants. You could make the same sort of design into earrings, anything like that you'd like, but that essentially is our offset pendants. Start big. Like I say, if you're starting with resin, definitely start with small projects like this. Less to go wrong and easier to turn than the bigger stuff. So before we go, Jace, do we have any questions before we go? No? Okay. In that case, what I'd like to do is say thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed that. Tomorrow we've got Ben doing Tormek, so I think he's going to be doing some wood turning tools on the Tormek. So if you're struggling with your turning, then watch Ben tomorrow, same time, same place, 3 o'clock in the Woodworking Wisdom Workshops. Thank you very much. I've been Colwin. Bye-bye.